Ever think about how, like, just normal everyday things can be, like, repurposed for, like, conflict and stuff?
Yeah.
Today, we're going to dive into, like, a case study that shows how blurry the line is between, like, civilian and military technology.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about the relationship between China and Pakistan and how they trade this kind of technology.
A very interesting relationship, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. This is a story that should interest anyone who, like, is interested in international relations, global security, and maybe even economics.
Absolutely. And it all starts with a shipment that was caught at an Indian port.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what was in this shipment? What was so suspicious about it?
Well, so authorities in India, they found CNC machines that were shipped from China going to Pakistan.
Okay.
Now, CNC machines by themselves, they aren't necessarily anything to worry about.
Right.
They can be used to manufacture a whole bunch of different things.
Right, like regular goods, right?
Yeah, like car parts to like appliances you use every day.
So, like, what's the problem then? What's the catch?
The catch is that these are what are called dual-use items.
Dual use.
Meaning that, yeah, they seem pretty innocent and harmless on the surface, but they can be used for military purposes.
Oh, okay, I see.
So these CNC machines, they could be used to make missile parts just as easily as they could be used to make car parts.
Wow, so that's kind of unsettling then, right? It's
Yeah.
like something you would see in a spy movie or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, you have the Pakistani government claiming that they were only going to use these machines for civilian purposes, which just adds another layer of like, well, how do you regulate this stuff?
Yeah, like how do you even try to control this stuff internationally? Is there like a rule book or something?
Well, there is. It's called the Wassenaar Arrangement.
Okay, the Wassenaar Arrangement.
It's basically an agreement between 42 different countries, and they try to share information about the transfer of arms and dual-use goods.
That makes sense. So, like, the goal is to stop potentially dangerous material from building up in one place.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm guessing China and Pakistan, they're part of this agreement, right?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Neither China nor Pakistan are actually members of the Wassenaar Arrangement,
Oh, wow.
so that means they don't have to follow the regulations, which makes it really hard to, like, track what they're doing with these sensitive goods.
So then India, since they're the ones who caught these shipments, they must be a member of this Wassenaar Arrangement, right?
You're right, they are. And in fact, India actually currently chairs the Wassenaar Arrangement.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which just goes to show that they really care about upholding these international norms and stopping the spread of weapons.
So it sounds like India is really taking a proactive approach here. So, like, what specifically are they doing to stop these kinds of shipments from getting through?
Well, they've got some pretty strong strategic trade control laws.
Okay.
Like, they recently stopped a shipment of orthochlorobenzylidine malononitrile.
Oh,
It's a chemical that's usually used for riot control,
mm-hmm.
but it can also be used as a weapon.
Oh, so even something like riot control chemicals can be dual use, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And this seizure just really shows how committed India is to enforcing these international agreements and preventing things like this from being misused.
Yeah, so it sounds like this stuff is really complicated. It seems like you would really need to know a lot about international law and trade practices to be able to do this effectively.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of expertise. It's not just knowing the laws.
Right.
It's also about being able to see how things could be misused and being really careful to watch out for anything that seems suspicious.
That makes sense. It sounds like countries like India play a really important role in keeping everyone safe.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're doing a lot to stop the spread of dangerous materials and make the world a safer place.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not easy.
Not at all.
It seems like what India is doing is really important, especially when you consider that some countries aren't even part of these international agreements.
Right.
So let's talk about China and Pakistan. What's going on with them?
Well, their strategic partnership, I mean, it goes back a long way, and China's been helping Pakistan build up its military.
Right.
But the concerning thing is that there's evidence that China's been doing things that kind of go against what they say publicly about stopping the spread of weapons.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a pretty serious accusation. Can you tell me more about what kind of things you're talking about?
Sure. So there's been a lot of suspicious shipments coming from China going to Pakistan.
Okay.
And I mean, we're talking about all sorts of things here.
Like what?
Industrial dryers.
Okay.
Those can be used to develop missiles.
Hmm.
Cryogenic oxygen tanks.
Yeah, and what are those used for?
Well, they're usually used in space programs,
Right.
but they can also be used for missile technology.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this sounds like this isn't just like a one-time thing. It seems like there's a pattern here.
You got it. And it's not just like they're sending this stuff in regular boxes or anything.
Right.
I mean, they're using really sneaky ways to get these materials into Pakistan.
Like what?
They've got shell companies. They're using really complicated documents. They're picking specific shipping routes. Like, they're really trying hard to avoid getting caught.
So they're really trying to get around the rules. Sounds like a game of cat and mouse almost.
It is, and it's a challenge for the international community to try to keep things stable and stop these dangerous technologies from spreading.
Yeah, it's interesting because China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council.
Right.
And they say they're all about stopping the spread of weapons, but then they're doing all this stuff that seems to contradict that.
It is kind of confusing, right? It makes you wonder, like, what are they really trying to do here?
Right. Like, are they really trying to keep the world safe? Or are they just looking out for themselves, even if it means breaking the rules?
It's a good question. Some people would say that China is just doing what's best for their country.
Right.
But it seems like they're going beyond that. I mean, they're doing stuff that's making it harder to stop the spread of dangerous weapons. And that's a problem for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what if China was part of the Wassenaar Arrangement? Wouldn't it be a lot harder for them to do all this stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's not just about the rules themselves.
Right.
It's also about being transparent and accountable.
Right.
And by not being part of this agreement, China doesn't have to answer to anyone.
Yeah, it seems like a loophole that other countries could use too, right?
Definitely a concern. I mean, if China can do it, then other countries might think, hey, why not us too?
Yeah.
And that could really weaken the whole system and make it harder to stop the spread of these dangerous materials.
Right. So how do we fix this? What can we do if China doesn't want to follow the rules?
Well, it's a tough situation. One thing we could try is diplomacy.
Okay.
We could talk to them, encourage them to join these agreements, show them how it would benefit everyone.
Yeah, like maybe there are some benefits for them too, but what if they don't listen? What if they just keep doing what they're doing?
Well, there's always the stick approach.
Okay, the stick approach, what's that?
Sanctions, basically punishing them economically.
Oh, but isn't that risky? China's like a huge economic power.
It is. It could have consequences for everyone, so it's a balancing act.
Yeah, definitely. So this whole thing also brings up another question. How do we even regulate new technologies like artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Or space technology?
Right.
Because that stuff can be used for both good and bad.
Right. Exactly. That's the big question. And it's uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Like AI, for instance.
Right.
That can be used for self-driving cars,
Right.
but it can also be used for weapons systems.
Wow. Okay, so it seems like with technology changing so quickly, we're always trying to catch up.
Yeah, we're always playing catch up, trying to come up with rules for things that we don't even fully understand yet.
Yeah, and it's not just the technology itself. It's also about making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, right?
Exactly. We have to be careful that non-state actors, rogue states, even just individuals, if they get their hands on this stuff, it could be really dangerous.
Yeah, so it seems like a really tough problem. Do you think we can actually find solutions for all of this?
I'm optimistic, but I'm also realistic.
Okay.
I think we can find solutions, but we have to work together.
Right.
We have to make the existing agreements stronger, come up with new rules for these new technologies, and we have to find a way to hold countries accountable for their actions.
So it sounds like a huge task, but it's really important to do it right.
Definitely. Because what's at stake here is really big.
Yeah.
We're talking about global security,
Right.
the potential for conflict, and the threat of these dangerous materials falling into the wrong hands.
And this all goes back to what we were talking about with China and Pakistan, right?
Exactly. It's not just a regional issue.
Right.
This is a problem that affects the whole world.
Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff in this deep dive about China and Pakistan and how they trade. We started off talking about CNC machines, but then we got into dual-use items and international agreements, and it's clear this isn't just like a small problem. This is something that could really affect the whole world.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild how China says one thing but then does another. Like, they talk about stopping the spread of weapons.
Right.
But then they're helping Pakistan build up their military. So it's like, what are they really up to?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to know what their real goals are.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they're not part of the Wassenaar Arrangement just makes everything more complicated.
Right. It's like they're trying to avoid being held accountable.
Yeah. And it could really weaken the whole system if other countries start doing the same thing.
Exactly. It sets a bad example.
So India has been really interesting in all of this. I mean, they've been stopping these shipments.
Yeah.
And they're really committed to following the rules. So it seems like they're really trying to keep things safe.
Definitely. They're doing their part.
So what can we do going forward? Like, how do we solve this problem?
Well, I think we have to try talking to China.
Okay, so diplomacy.
Right. Try to get them to join these agreements and show them how it would be good for everyone.
Right, but what if they don't want to cooperate?
Well, then we might have to think about other options, like sanctions.
Okay, so like economic punishments.
Yeah, but we have to be careful with that.
Right, it could backfire. So this all makes me think about how we're going to handle new technologies in the future,
Mm-hmm.
like artificial intelligence
Right.
or space technology. I mean, that stuff could be used for good things,
For sure.
but it could also be really dangerous. So how do we even begin to come up with rules for stuff that's changing so fast?
That's the big question. We're in uncharted territory here.
Yeah, and it's not just about the technology itself. It's also about making sure that the wrong people don't get a hold of it.
Right, that's the scary part.
So this whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's amazing how something like trade can have such a big impact on the whole world.
It really is. It's all interconnected.
So to wrap things up, we've learned about China and Pakistan and how they trade. We've talked about the challenges of regulating dual-use items and how all of this affects global security. We hope you found this deep dive informative. If you did, please like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world's most important issues. See you next time.